what season of life are you in, right? We cannot force something to grow out of season. If I have a tulip and it is winter outside and I demand that tulip to grow, and if it doesn't grow, am I to curse that tulip, or am I wrong? Am I wrong for putting that tulip plant in the wrong season, in the wrong climate, during the wrong time, right? Am I giving it enough nutrients? No, like I'm wrong, not the tulip itself. The tulip was meant to bloom in spring. And so a lot of us are operating outside of the seasons that we're in, which is why we don't feel aligned, which is why we feel tired or held back in some instances. And so we're going to use the 4 seasons here in the States as an example. And I'll say East Coast states too, because California apparently doesn't have winter. But yeah, so we're going to talk about summer, fall, winter, and spring. I don't know why it's so hard to think about those. Summer, fall, winter, and spring. So you can't force something to grow out of season. And that includes you, your art, and your work. You are not evergreen. I promise you, I assure you, if you're a human being, you're not evergreen. You need rest. You need time to reflect, to go deeper, to, rejuvenate. Every other animal does this. Every animal, mammal specifically, goes into hibernation in the wintertime to conserve energy, to replenish themselves, to rest. We have to rest our land. Even when we think about farming, they rest their land because if they keep farming that same land, they're going to take all the nutrients out of it. And it's not going to have anything to yield when it's time to harvest, right? The food is not going to be nutritional. And so for us, if we're constantly creating, constantly doing, then we're going to be out of season, out of line, and overspent and exhausted and burnout. So as someone who is healing from burnout right now, you do not want to feel burnout. You want to be able to take your time. So all seasons are good. All seasons are good. All seasons have something to offer, right? But there's beauty in all season. For example, the summertime, like you think of like the heat and the fun, the partying and the being out and the moving and the traveling, right? In the fall, things start to slow down. You see the beauty of the leaves and the leaves falling, that kind of stuff. In the winter, you have snow, you have quiet, you have peace, you have rest. You have kind of this time between January and March where the world is asleep, And in spring, you have the beauty of newness. You have beauty of fruit and blossoms and all these other things. And so it's the same thing in our lives, right? So every season is different, but it has beauty. So right now I'm going to start with winter because it is winter. And I feel like I'm in my winter season. So I feel very lethargic. I feel very tired. I feel like my energy is limited, right? I feel like all the things that I wanted to do aren't necessarily priority right now. What is priority is me conserving energy, healing, resting, playing, having deep connections with people. So it's a restful season. It's a restful season. So you look at the trees outside, they don't have leaves on it. And so people can think that it's dead, but it's not dead. Really, the tree is just conserving energy because we know that leaves take in sunlight, transform that sun into energy, into food. And so in the wintertime, there's not that much sun. In the wintertime, there's not that much daylight. And so in order to conserve energy, the trees have to let go of the leaves. And so that's why the leaves are bare. But the tree is very much alive. The tree is just conserving energy. It's alive. It's still eating. It's still, feeding, but it's going more internal, right? And deeper, like connecting with the tree roots that it has around it to communicate, to feed each other, to take care of each other. That's how we are in our winter season. And so I should also note that just because you're in that season doesn't mean that season has to be happening right now, right? So some people are alive during the wintertime. They can get a lot done. Some people want to rest during the summertime, and some people it's vice versa, right? Some people want to rest during winter, and some people have a lot of energy during the summertime. So, I'm just listing some, feels of whatever season so that you can determine what season you're in. So in the summer, you're kind of lethargic. You want to rest. You want stillness, community. Like you want contemplation, introspection. You want to pause. You want to cozy, right? I love cozying in general, but especially during the wintertime when it's cold. So next we have spring. Spring is a time of new birth. It's about color, inspiration, budding curiosity, beginning, being an amateur, right? Doing something for the first time, preparation and learning, admiring and being infatuated with something. So you don't necessarily have to start doing something, but it's about falling in love with something or being enamored with something, right? It's about admiring the beauty. It's about starting something fresh and new, a new season in your life. And so usually when you're in your spring, you're like really inspired, like you're ready, like, oh my God, like this is amazing. I'm just finding out this great thing. Let's get to it. How can I start to do this thing? And so if you're farming, in the spring, you're tilling the land, you're getting the soil ready to receive seed. And it's the same thing in our lives. You're getting yourself ready to learn something new or to try something new. and you're really enamored with something before you actually get started with the hard work. And tilling is hard work, but for the sake of this example, you're just getting started. So then you have summer. Summer is about the work, right? It's about going all in. It's about things being lush and having like a rainy season and it being warm and, working the land and playing and communal living and building and connecting with others, right? You're going out partying, usually picnics, going out in nature, also admiring the land as well. And so in your summer season, you usually have a lot of energy. You have a burst of energy. You feel alive, like you feel in flow, right? You feel like you're doing the thing. Then you have fall, which is about harvesting. And so much like I talked about before with the leaves and how the leaves fall, you're harvesting, you're celebrating all the work that you've done, you're celebrating the harvest that you brought in, but also you're starting to make room for rest. You're starting to trim down the fat, trim down the things that you don't need to do, trim down like all the extra stuff. Like we're putting all the extra stuff aside, right? Getting ready for winter, for our rest season. So I feel like as creatives, we should all be working in this season, right? With different projects even. So even with the podcast was on hiatus because I needed a break, but I had spent so much time and so much work putting that podcast together, putting together workshops and all this other stuff. And so when my winter season came, I needed a break and I could celebrate all the work that I did. I don't have to take a break, unwillingly or like with regret and guilt. I can take a break because I celebrated all the things I did with Black Girl Creative, all the lives impacted, all the people like connected, all the work that was done. And I could see the work that I did for that land and I could rest the land and give it a break. And so now we're just getting started, getting back. We're still in winter season for Black Girl Creative, but the work that we're doing is more about internal and introspective work as opposed to like output. And so that's the focus for this season. Okay. And so in the fall, like you're winding down, you're shedding leaves, you're focusing on what's essential, right? And then you're wrapping up. And so then you prepare for the winter, but you're also giving away what has been grown, right? So during harvest season, you take what you need and you go to the community and you give away the rest that you don't. So all the wisdom, all the information, all that stuff you can give away. All right. So to be honest, every year isn't for growing and farming. Again, just like with agriculture, and agriculture will be a reoccurring theme within this because I really feel like our creativity is just like land. It's just like nature. Like it has seasons, it has temperaments, it has climates that it works best in, all that good stuff, right? So yes, every year isn't for growing, right? So the first question I want you to ask yourself is, what season of life are you in right now? Be honest, like take stock of how you feel, of your capacity, of your energy, of where you are in your creative projects, how you're feeling about your creative projects. Does it feel like you're hitting a wall? Does it feel like you have a burst of energy, you're inspired like spring, or you're working like summer, or are you celebrating the work that you've done like fall, and or are you resting like winter? Yes. And so one thing I should say is that even in your life, it has seasons. Your artwork and your work has seasons too. So you can be in a summertime of your life, but your work could be in the winter time, like resting. And that's really important for people who are multi-passionate like myself, who have a lot of projects going for themselves, because while one project is resting, you can start working on another project. So for Black Girl Creative, it has seasons, right? Another podcast I do is the Full Well Project. It has seasons. And so when the season is done, I leave it and I let it sit. I gain experience. I live a little bit. And I go create something else. I go make music, or I don't do anything at all, And so that is freeing because you can do multiple projects, not at the same time, but in different seasons of your life. Okay. So the second question I have after what season of life are you living in right now is, how can you honor that season and its beauty? How can you honor it? Instead of being mad at yourself for being tired, maybe you can go take a nap. Maybe you can not take on so many responsibilities. I know for myself with my winter season, I'm not giving myself 10 things to do that day because I'm going to be down on myself when I can't complete them, when I can't get them done, right? So I literally either give myself one thing a day to do or one thing a week to do. That's something new that I'm implementing and it feels great. It feels awesome. I don't have to be somewhere. I don't have to do something. I'm doing it because I want to, and I'm honoring the season I'm in because I know my spring is coming. It's just not right now. Okay. So the clarity of our seasons will have us monitoring our expectations, right? We don't expect a full harvest in spring. We're just getting started. And that means you can be nice to yourself when you're learning something new. You're not going to be good at it. And it's okay, right? So if you know that you're in spring, your expectation is not to be good. Your expectation is to fall in love with it, to become totally like enamored with it, to like be taken with it, to try it, to experiment, to play. In your fall, in your harvest season, in your fall season, that's when you're like, oh, look what I've created. Look at this. And sharing it with other people, right? So during spring and summer, it's more about cultivating and taking care of what you have. In the fall, that's when you start sharing it. That's when you start exposing your art for the sake of that, for it to be consumed by other people. Okay? Okay, and you don't expect yourself to work hard in your winter. You should not, because that is exhausting. That's how you burn out. That's how you do too much. And I am still recovering from burnout. So here we go. So what capacity do you have for the things in your life? We're going to talk about capacity now, right? So living with margin, when people think about living with margin, they usually think about money, meaning that if I make $100, I don't want to be spending $100 because I'm going to be broke, right? More margin means if I make $100, I might spend 50 and save the other 50. So I have room just in case an emergency happens, or I want to buy something very nice, or I want to make some savings. Like I have some room for just in case, right? The thing with us is a lot of us are operating at full capacity. So this is a full water bottle, right? And so what happens if any inconvenience happens in our lives, we're spilling over, right? There's no room in our cup for more. There's no room in our cup for emergencies or for friends who need us or for, a break in our schedule. Like we're working constantly, and that's not healthy. And so what I really want us to do is maybe have our cup 75% full, maybe on a good day. Like even when you feel like you have a burst of energy, you're not doing 100%. You still need room to recover, room to relax. And I don't think that you should empty yourself out completely when you're creating. You should still leave a little bit of stuff in there, a little bit of room so you can show up the next day and have something more to do, as opposed to emptying yourself out of everything. Then you're exhausted. Then you have to start from scratch. It's a lot of work. Work with yourself, not against yourself. Okay? And so we live with margin in our lives to avoid being overwhelmed and to avoid being stressed out. And so when you're stressed out and overwhelmed and burned out, you can't create anything of substance, nothing in a good way anyway, not in a healthy way. When you're burnt out, you literally don't want to do anything. It's like an injury. Being burned out is an injury. Being exhausted is an injury. And so if I break my leg, I'm not going to sit there and be like, okay, well, I'm gonna wrap it up today and start walking on it tomorrow. No, I need to give it time and space to heal. And that takes time. And that takes time away from me doing other things. And that's okay, right? Because maybe that season is a winter season. But when you're overdoing it all the time, you're constantly fracturing yourself. You're constantly breaking yourself. And we don't want to do that. All right. So I want you to ask yourself, what capacity are you at now? Is there lots of room in your cup? Is it filled to capacity? Like, are you overwhelming yourself? Did you take on too many tasks? Are you not doing enough? How do you feel, right? Is it filled to the brim? Are you overwhelmed? Let's start to give ourselves more margin today, right now. Okay, so I really want us to really reflect on these two questions about the seasons of our life and the capacity at which, we stand. A lot of times in your winter season, you might have some room, but it doesn't need to be filled, right? Or it can be filled to capacity. In the summer seasons, we feel like, I feel good now, let me do everything. And then that works against us. We do that to our detriment, right? We want to have a healthy relationship with our productivity, with our art, with our creativity. And we want to work within our seasons and work with our seasons. I'm not going to plant, I'm not going to plant, again, tulips in the winter. Why would I do that? Right? And then be mad when it doesn't sprout or grow. Or if it does grow, then it's going to die because it's going to freeze. That's literally what's happening on my mother's porch. She has, I forget what plant it is. I feel like it might be tulips. And we got like a burst of like warm weather for a week here in the DMV, and it started sprouting. And so what happened the next week is it snowed. And so now those plants are injured, right? So we don't want to do that for ourselves. We don't want to sprout and we think like, oh, I got this burst of energy. Let me do everything. It's like, no, still honor the season. Like, take it slow, be gentle with yourself. You don't have to go full into the season that you think that you're coming out of, because it might be a false start, right? And you might have an empty cup and you might get like a splash of water, get too excited, and then now you're empty all over again. We don't want to do that. And so much like the new year, we always start the new year with so many resolutions, so many things we want to do. But what if we actually did less this year, right? What if we actually came from a place of enoughness and knowing that we're enough, knowing that nothing that we do or sell or share adds to our worth, that we're inherently worthy? I feel like we would do less and we would be less overwhelmed. We would be operating within our seasons and being okay with the season that we're in, excuse me. And so, when you think of a cluttered room, right, you can't breathe, like it's clutter. Like, let's declutter our lives. Let's take away all the extra stuff that's not working. That's not working in the season or at this time. Let's actually work within the seasons that we're in. Okay. No more jam packing our schedules and goals. No more, overreaching or overdoing and then being mad at ourselves for not being able to complete something. We have to be gentle with ourselves. Less is more. You start small to win big. And we'll talk more about that later. But for now, I really want you to deal with yourself with ease and kindness and gentleness, right? The world is work-based. You don't have to treat yourself like that. You can change the culture of your own life. And so if you know that you're already loved, worthy, and valued, you can start now. You can start operating within your season right now, right? And so I got this section of this topic on a workshop that I gave about New Year resolutions and how, we need to stop making so many New Year resolutions. Stop making resolutions out of the need to be better, to be loved, to be enough, because you're already enough, right? And if we knew that we were already enough, half of these goals we would not complete. Because the thing is, we feel like when I lose that weight, then I'll be worthy. When I achieve this thing, then I'll be worthy. When I, gain acclaim, when I get this award, when I get this promotion, when I make this money, when I have this money in my bank, then I'll be worthy. But really, none of that stuff adds to your worthiness. And none of that stuff is promised, right? And so if those things aren't promised, we have to choose to honor ourselves and see ourselves as worthy today, even without all that stuff. Even in our winter season when we're sleeping, when we're laying dormant, when we're hibernating. And we really have to do the work of seeing ourselves as worthy and enough so that we can work with ourselves and not be an enemy to ourselves as we've been for so many years. You don't owe anyone any explanation as to what season you're in or why. I would love to hear it because I'm interested. I would love to know so that I know how to better serve you. But you know what season you're in. You know it. You don't have to ask people permission to operate in it. You can give yourself permission. So let's get to implementation, right? So for this week, for this month, I would love for you to identify what season of life you are in. Are you in winter, spring, summer, or fall? Or maybe you don't know, or somewhere in between some seasons. That's okay too. Or maybe you're a combination of some seasons. That's okay too. The second question I want you to answer is, at what capacity are you operating? At full? Meaning you have no room for any surprises, any good surprises, happy surprises, any emergencies, any things that might pop up in your life? Or do you have room for margin? We want margin. Margin is a good thing. We don't want to be booked and busy. That's not the goal. We want margin in our lives. Answer those two questions for me. And if your answer is that you are full to the brim, what things can you place aside? What things can you set aside that aren't serving you right now? Like, I know that it feels like everything is important. Everything is imperative. It's not. Everything is not important. Everything is not imperative, and not right now. At some point it will be, but it doesn't have to be today. You get to decide whether or not you want to honor your season or work against it. Whether you want to slave away in the winter season of your life, you know what I mean? Or if you want to do too much in the summer and overexhaust yourself and overheat yourself. Like, you can overdo it in any season. But I want us to actually look at our land, feel it, feel where we are, feel our capacity, and answer honestly. And then try to figure out, how can we add more margin to it? And how can we honor that season? So if you're in your winter season, can you go to bed earlier? Can you take on less responsibility? If you're in your summer season, are you overdoing it? What can you do? Like, how can you be focused in this season? If you're in your fall season, how are you sharing what you created? How are you celebrating yourself in what you created? Because we're real quick to move on to the next thing. How can you share that with somebody else? In your spring, like, what are you allowing yourself to be taken with, just to have fun with, to fall in love with? Like, these are the questions I want you to answer. And we will talk again soon, because I'm going to talk about how to actually rest your land, why that's important. But for right now, I would love to know the answers to those questions. And again, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please feel free to leave them below. Please interact. I would love to see you all interacting, and I would love to be able to serve you better, to serve what you need, the questions that you have. And I think I have a question in the group as well, asking, what things are you struggling with right now as a creative? And I would love to hear from you on that. And I will talk to you all in the next video. I love you. Bye.